7 seasons in, Trey Parker and Matt Stone admitted they had no idea who Cartman's father was. They had ended season 1 on a cliffhanger promising the answer. They trolled the entire audience with a Terrence and Phillip episode instead. Then they gave an answer that 12 seasons later they quietly admitted was a lie the whole town told to protect a football team's winning streak. That is one show. 27 seasons. 10 separate moments where the canon broke, contradicted itself, got quietly rewritten, or accidentally predicted its own future inside a dream sequence that the show's own documentation later declared mostly did not happen. South Park has been running since 1997. It moves faster than any other show on television. It has no continuity manager. It rewrites its own history when it needs to, ignores its own history when it does not, and occasionally stumbles into accidentally getting things right before it knew what the right answer was. Welcome to East Park. Let us begin. Cartman's father. The 3-season lie. There is a moment in season 14 of South Park where Eric Cartman finds out who his real father is. He stands there and the show watches him process it. Not process the fact that his father is dead. Not process the fact that he killed his own father and served him as chili to his half-brother 9 seasons earlier. He processes the fact that he is half ginger. That reaction tells you everything about how South Park handles its own history. The story of Cartman's father is the longest running canon problem in the show's entire run. It stretches from season 1 to season 14. It involves a lie told to an 8-year-old boy by an entire town. It involves a Denver Broncos football player, a drunken barn dance, a hermaphrodite reveal that turned out to be fake, and one of the most celebrated episodes in the show's history accidentally containing the seeds of its own retcon. And the whole thing started because Trey Parker and Matt Stone genuinely did not think anyone would care. That is worth holding on to for a second. The show's creators, when they built the cliffhanger at the end of season 1, were not setting up a long game. They admitted in the DVD commentary for season 2 that they thought the question of who fathered a cartoon kid would land as a throwaway joke. They were wrong about what people would care about. And because they were wrong, they spent over a decade in a hole they dug by accident. Here is how the hole got dug. Season 1, episode 13 is called Cartman's Mom is a Dirty Slut. The episode does exactly what the title suggests it might. The town of South Park discovers that Leon Cartman has slept with essentially every man in town. A DNA test is ordered by Dr. Mephisto to determine who fathered Eric Cartman. The episode ends before the results come back. The screen goes dark. A narrator promises the answer in 4 weeks. 4 weeks pass. The season 2 premiere arrived, and what viewers got instead of an answer was an entire episode about Terrence and Phillip. Not a single South Park kid appeared. Not a single mention of the paternity test. Just 2 Canadian guys farting at each other for 22 minutes. This was the April Fool's joke. Parker and Stone thought it was hilarious. The audience did not agree. The anger was real enough that Parker and Stone have mentioned it repeatedly over the year, including in creator commentary, as a moment where they misjudged the audience completely. People had genuinely been waiting. The joke landed wrong. The actual answer came in the next episode. Season 2, episode 2 is called Cartman's Mom is Still a Dirty Slut. Dr. Mephisto finally delivers the results. Leon Cartman, it turns out, is a hermaphrodite. She has both sets of reproductive parts. She is therefore both Cartman's mother and his father. The question is answered. The show moves on. For 12 seasons, that was the answer. Cartman had no father. His mother was his father. It was a weird, gross South Park resolution to a question that was already weird and gross, and it sat in the canon untouched while the show kept going. Then came season 5. Season 5, episode 4 is called Scott Tenorman Must Die. A 9th grader named Scott Tenorman tricks Cartman into buying his pubic hair for $10, convincing him this is how puberty works. Cartman realizes he has been fooled and spends the episode trying to get his money back. Every plan fails. Scott humiliates him at every turn. By the end of the episode, Cartman has arranged for Scott's parents to be shot dead, had their bodies ground into chili, and fed the chili to Scott while Radiohead watches Scott cry. The episode is widely considered one of the best in the show's history. Rolling Stone ranked the moment of Scott eating his parents as the 2nd greatest South Park moment ever made. Parker and Stone named it as one of their 10 favorite episodes twice. At no point during the production of Scott Tenorman Must Die did anyone intend for Jack Tenorman to be Cartman's father. Jack was a prop, a pair of parents who existed to be murdered. The episode needed victims, and Scott Tenorman needed a reason to be destroyed completely. Jack Tenorman was a Denver Broncos player. This detail was included because Denver is near South Park geographically, and because the Broncos were a natural Colorado reference. Nothing more. 9 seasons passed. Season 14 is where the show turned 20 episodes into a milestone celebration. Episodes 5 and 6 are called 200 and 201, titled after the show's 200th episode. The premise is that every famous person South Park has ever mocked comes to town to sue. The list is long. Tom Cruise, Mecha Streisand, Rob Reiner, and dozens dozens more descend on the Colorado mountain town simultaneously. In the middle of all of this, a storyline about Cartman's father re-emerges. Scott Tenorman has been in a mental institution since the Chili incident. During his time there, he researched Cartman's history obsessively. What he found is that his father, Jack Tenorman, played right tackle for the Denver Broncos, and during a drunken barn dance in South Park, Jack had an affair with Leon Cartman. Leon became pregnant. Eric Cartman was born. The whole town had known. They covered it up because the Broncos were having a good season and they did not want a distraction to hurt the team's performance. Dr. Mephisto had almost told Cartman the truth in season 1, but the episode shows that he was shot by his own brother who was a Broncos fan before he could reveal it. The hermaphrodite story was fabricated. The entire season 2 reveal was a lie. This means Cartman killed his own father in season 5, ground him into chili, fed him to his half-brother Scott. The show presents Cartman's reaction to this information. He cries. But the final scene makes clear he is not crying because he killed his father. He is crying because Jack Tenorman had red hair, which means Cartman carries the ginger gene. He is half ginger. That is what breaks him. Now here is where the canon problem lived. The season 2 hermaphrodite answer was not presented as a rumor. It was presented as a confirmed DNA result from a laboratory. Dr. Mephisto ran the test. The test came back. The answer was delivered as fact. For 12 seasons, that was the show's official position on what happened. The retcon in season 14 does something clever to get around this. It explains that the test results were falsified. The town lied. The in-universe explanation exists, but that explanation requires accepting that Dr. Mephisto, the scientist character, fabricated laboratory results and lied to an 8-year-old about his parentage on behalf of a football team for over a decade of in-show time. It works as a story. It is a legitimate narrative move, but it is still a direct contradiction between two canon events. In season 2, the results were real. In season 14, they were not. Both cannot be true, and there is a second layer to the problem. The episode City on the Edge of Forever aired in season 2, episode 7. In that episode, Cartman has a dream within a dream about the father reveal. In his distorted dream memory, his father is John Elway, a famous Denver Broncos quarterback. The show presents this as a wrong memory. It is a dream. Everything in the episode is wrong by design, and Elway is obviously not the real answer. But when season 14 reveals the real father to be a Denver Bronco, it accidentally gives the dream memory a kind of half-truth status. The show never comments on this. No one points out that even in Cartman's distorted sleep, he associated his father with the Broncos. The connection is either a genuinely clever piece of backward planted evidence or a coincidence that retroactively looks like one. Parker and Stone have never explicitly said which it is. What they have said through official South Park Studios channels is that they did not plan the Jack Tenorman reveal from the beginning. The DVD commentary on season 2 makes their original intent clear. The hermaphrodite answer was meant to be the final word. The retcon came later, when they wanted to do something with the show's 200th episode that connected to its past in a meaningful way. Scott Tenorman Must Die was such a celebrated episode that bringing Scott back for the milestone made sense. And once Scott was back, someone in the writer's room connected the dots. Jack Tenorman was a Bronco. The original suspect list in season 1 had included the 1989 Denver Broncos roster, and the connection was there to be made. The problem is that making it required unmaking something the show had already established as resolved. The hermaphrodite answer was not a mystery left open. It was a closed case. Opening it 12 seasons later meant the show was retroactively changing what it had told its audience was true. South Park is not the only show that has done this. Retroactive continuity, changing what was established as fact to serve a new story, is common across long-running television. But South Park has a specific relationship with this practice because the show has always positioned itself as a series that moves fast, reacts to the world in real time, and does not care much about maintaining a careful internal record of its own history. What makes the Cartman father story different from most retcons is how emotionally loaded the original question was. People genuinely wanted to know who Cartman's father was. They cared about it in a way that surprised the people who made the show. And because they cared, the resolution carried real weight, both in season 2 when the hermaphrodite answer was given, and in season 14 when that answer was stripped away. The irony underneath all of it is that the retcon made the story considerably darker. The hermaphrodite answer, weird as it was, meant Cartman had simply been born to a woman with an unusual biology. The Jack Tenorman answer means Cartman's father was a man who was shot on a pony farm, ground into chili, and fed to his other son. All because Eric Cartman wanted revenge for $10 worth of pubic hair. Cartman spent his whole life wanting to know who his father was. He found out at the worst possible moment in the most terrible possible way, and his reaction was to be upset about his hair color. South Park did that on purpose. That is the show working exactly as intended. The canon problem underneath it is real. Two sets of confirmed facts exist exist in the same timeline and cannot both be true. The show built a bridge between them. The town lied, the test was fake, the cover-up was for football reasons, and that bridge holds the weight if you don't push on it too hard. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. But the Cartman father story is not even the most structurally strange thing the show has done to its own canon. The next case involves a character who has died over 100 times, came back from a permanent death with no explanation, and then received a supernatural backstory 14 seasons in that was supposed to explain everything, and almost does, except for the parts it quietly doesn't. Section 2, Kenny McCormick. The immortality problem Kenny McCormick died in the very first episode of South Park. He died in the second episode, the third, the fourth. He died in almost every single episode of the first 5 seasons of the show, usually in increasingly creative ways, usually within the last few minutes, and usually with Stan and Kyle responding with the same 2 lines every time. Oh my god, they killed Kenny, you bastard. Then the next episode would start and Kenny would be standing at the bus stop like nothing happened. No explanation, no acknowledgement. The show simply moved on, and so did everyone watching. For 5 seasons, that was the deal. Kenny died. Kenny came back. Nobody asked why. Then season 5, the show killed him for real. And the fact that it felt different from all the other deaths is the first clue that something about the ongoing joke had always been more complicated than it looked. The episode is called Kenny Dies. It is season 5, episode 13. Kenny gets sick. Not cartoon sick, not killed by a falling piano sick, but genuinely seriously ill. He is diagnosed with a terminal muscular condition. He is hospitalized. The boys visit him. The show plays it straight. No joke deaths, no reset at the end of the episode, no winking at the audience. Kenny gets worse. His friends try to help him. By the end of the episode, he is gone. Parker and Stone stated in DVD commentary that they had grown tired of the death gag. It had become what they called a prop, something the show did automatically rather than something that meant anything. Kenny had become a function rather than a character. They wanted to retire the bit, and they wanted to do it in a way that felt earned rather than just quietly stopping it. What followed was all of season 6, with Kenny absent. The show tried out other characters as the 4th member of the group, Butters for a while, then Tawik. Neither stuck permanently. The show felt the absence in ways that were hard to define but easy to notice. Then in the season 6 finale, an episode called Red Sleigh Down, Kenny came back, alive, standing at the bus stop. No explanation given. No character acknowledged that he had died from a terminal illness the previous season. The show simply reinstated him and kept moving. This is the first canonical problem with Kenny, and it is the clearest one. A character dies from a disease in an episode that was specifically designed to be a real death. Parker and Stone said so directly, and then returns from that death without the show ever explaining how. The muscular condition he died from was not a cartoon death. It was not a joke. The episode was built around the idea that this death would be permanent. Then it was not. The show's implicit argument from that point forward seemed to be that Kenny dying and coming back was just part of the show's logic, something that happened in the background that everyone accepted without pressing on it. And for several more seasons, that remained the case. The real explanation, the one that would eventually be given, arrived in season 14. Season 14 contains a 3-part story across episodes 11, 12, and 13 called Coon 2, Hindsight, Mysterian Rises, and Coon vs. Coon and Friend. The superhero alter egos of the South Park kids are the focus. Cartman's alter ego is the Coon. Kenny's alter ego is Mysterian, a dark, hooded figure who has been a mystery to both the other characters and the audience for the preceding season. In Mysterian Rises, Kenny removes his hood. The audience already knew it was him, but the significance of the reveal is not the identity, it is what comes next. Kenny, as Mysterian, explains to the other kids that he cannot die. He has tried. He has died in front of them. He has died more times than he can count, and every single time, he wakes up fine, with nobody remembering it happened. He is the only one who remembers dying. Everyone else's memory resets. To demonstrate this, he pulls out a gun and shoots himself in the head in front of his friends. They watch him die. The next scene, they have no memory of it. Kenny is standing there again. They look at him blankly. He tells them what just happened. They do not believe him. This scene is the most direct the show has ever been about what the Kenny death gag actually meant underneath all the comedy. The joke was never really about Kenny dying. The joke was about nobody caring, and the show retroactively made that into something sadder than a punchline. The explanation for Kenny's immortality comes through his parents. In Coon 2, Hindsight and Mysterian Rises, it is revealed that Kenny's parents used to attend meetings of a cult centered around the entity Cthulhu, a monster from old horror stories by H.P. Lovecraft. They did not attend because they believed in the cult. They attended for the free beer. But the connection to the cult created something in Kenny, a curse or a power, depending on how the show frames it at any given moment. Kenny cannot stay dead. When he dies, his mother gives birth to him again. He grows back to the right age overnight. Nobody remembers remembers the death but him. The cult connection, made while his mother was pregnant, is what caused it. This explanation is clean. It accounts for the memory erasure, which is why Stan and Kyle never seem traumatized by watching their friend die repeatedly. It accounts for the rapid return. It gives the whole running gag a mythology that makes internal sense, except for several specific things it does not account for. The first problem is the season 5 death. The cult explanation covers deaths by violence, accident, and general cartoon chaos, but Kenny dies established something the show treated as distinct. He died from a medical condition, a terminal illness. The disease killed him in a way the show presented as genuinely final and permanent. The Mysterian explanation covers supernatural resurrection triggered by violent or unnatural death. It does not cleanly explain how a muscular disease falls under that rule. The show never addresses this directly. The season 5 death and the season 14 explanation exist in the same canon without a bridge between them. There is a fan-written theory on the South Park wiki that attempts to work this out, suggesting that natural causes might be able to hold Kenny in a permanent state of death unless a higher power intervenes, and that God or Satan has stepped in on at least one occasion to release him. The show does not confirm this. It is a fan's attempt to fill a gap the show left open. The second problem involves memory. The Mysterian arc establishes clearly that when Kenny dies, everyone forgets. That is part of the supernatural rule the cult connection created. But across the first 5 seasons of the show, there are multiple episodes where characters demonstrably reference Kenny having died. In Cartman Joins Nambla Season 4, Episode 5, Kenny dies, and his parents have a new baby they name Kenny immediately after, which the episode plays as a straightforward joke about the McCormick's casual relationship with death and loss. This scene, which most fans remember as funny and harmless, is actually one of the few early era moments that accidentally anticipated the later mythology, since it implies his mother was birthing him again. But the broader early season pattern of characters casually acknowledging Kenny's deaths contradicts the memory erasure rule the show would later establish as the explanation. The third problem is Cartman. In the scene in Mysterian Rises where Kenny shoots himself and the other kids immediately forget, Cartman is not present. This is not an accident. Looper and others have noted that Cartman seems to be the one character across the show's history who retains some awareness of Kenny dying. There are early era moments where Cartman references Kenny's deaths in ways the other kids do not. The show never explicitly confirms that Cartman is immune to the memory erasure effect, but his absence from the scene where the effect is demonstrated has been read by fans as deliberate, the show building in an exception without stating it. There is a separate fan theory about why Cartman might remember. In Season 4, Episode 4, an episode called Cherokee Hair Tampons, Kenny donates a kidney to Cartman to save his life. In Season 6, Episode 8, Cartman consumes Kenny's ashes, and Kenny's soul temporarily inhabits Cartman's body, eventually transferring into the body of actor Rob Schneider. The theory holds that the kidney transplant, or the soul transfer, or both, created a permanent spiritual link between Cartman and Kenny that gives Cartman partial access to memories the cult-connected reset would otherwise erase. The show does not confirm this, but it also does not deny it, and the circumstantial evidence across multiple episodes is specific enough that it does not read as coincidence. The fourth and most structurally interesting problem involves the total death count. Kenny has died across the TV series and the film South Park, bigger, longer, and uncut, approximately 98 to 100 times on screen. When the original Spirit of Christmas shorts, video games, and the show's title sequence deaths across specific seasons are added, the confirmed count across all official South Park material reaches somewhere between Un-26 and Un-31, depending on which sources are counted and which edge cases, dream deaths, avatar deaths in the World of Warcraft episode, soul possession death are included or excluded. South Park Archives and Wikipedia both list 126 as the primary figure. Slash Film calculated 128 when title sequence deaths are included. A detailed breakdown on CBR reached a 131 when the Rob Schneider soul possession death is counted. The reason this matters for canon is that the Mysterian explanation was given retroactively, applied backward across all of those deaths at once. The explanation works for most of them, but it creates a specific tension around the earliest deaths, before the show had any mythology built around Kenny at all. In the Spirit of Christmas short that preceded the TV series, Kenny died. The cult connection in the Cthulhu mythology did not exist yet, not even as an idea. The show is asking its audience to accept that a supernatural backstory dreamed up in Season 14 applies not just to the TV series, but to a short film made in 1985 before South Park was even a show. Most fans are willing to accept this. The mythology is good enough that the reach backward feels reasonable rather than forced, but it is still a retroactive explanation applied to events that predated the explanation by nearly 2 decades of real time. There is also the question of what the immortality actually is. The show calls it a curse curse at some points and a power at others. In Mysterian Reeses, Kenny frames it as something that makes him miserable. He remembers every death, he wakes up alone with the knowledge of what happened, and nobody believes him when he tries to talk about it. The experience is described as isolating and painful. In South Park, The Fractured But Whole, the video game released in 2017, dying and reviving is literally one of Mysterian's gameplay abilities, framed as a superpower the player can use strategically. Both versions of what the immortality means exist in official South Park material, with opposite emotional registers. Kenny's art across the show's history is one of the more genuinely strange things South Park produced. A running gag about a kid dying every week, played purely for absurdist shock value in the early seasons, eventually became a portrait of a character who experiences the world in a way nobody around him can understand or remember. The Mysterian episodes gave the joke a foundation it never originally had. That foundation mostly works. The gaps in it are real. The season 5 permanent death and the season 14 explanation do not fully connect. The memory erasure rule contradicts early era behavior. The retroactive application of the mythology to pre-series material requires a generous reading, and the show's handling of what the immortality feels like, curse versus superpower, changes depending on which format the story is being told in. What the show did with Kenny across 25 plus years was build a mythology around something that started as a throwaway joke and give it enough weight that the joke started to mean something different in retrospect. That is a genuinely difficult thing to do. The fact that the mythology has seams is almost inevitable given how long the gap was between the original gag and the explanation. But Kenny's story, with all its gaps, is at least a story the show built intentionally, even if the building happened late and had to reach backward to connect to what came before. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The next case involves a story the show did not build intentionally at all. It involves something Parker and Stone said in 2006 that they spent the next 12 years realizing was wrong, and then did something almost no television show has ever done about it. Section 3, Man Bear Pig. The Canon apology. In 2006, Trey Parker and Matt Stone made an episode about Al Gore. The episode is called Man Bear Pig. It is season 10, episode 6. Gore arrives in South Park and tells the boys he needs their help hunting a creature called Man Bear Pig. Half man, half bear, half pig. He describes it as the greatest threat facing the planet. He is serial about it. Very serial. The boys follow him into a cave. Gore throws a grenade. The cave collapses. Man Bear Pig is nowhere to be found because Man Bear Pig does not exist. The boys nearly die. Gore gets on television to take credit for saving the day from a monster that was never there. The episode is a joke about Al Gore specifically, and about a certain kind of political alarm raising more broadly. Gore is portrayed as a lonely, attention-seeking man who invented a crisis to feel important after losing the 2000 presidential election. The boys, who are usually the most gullible people in town, see through him immediately. Stan calls him out directly by the end of the episode, telling Gore that he just uses Man Bear Pig to get attention because he is a loser. The creature remains fictional. The warning remains a joke. The episode ends with Gore getting no validation and the boys moving on. The episode aired in April 2006. Al Gore's documentary, An Inconvenient Truth, came out 1 month later in May 2006 and became a major cultural event. The documentary won the Academy Award for Best Documentary in 2007. Gore won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2007 for his climate work. None of that changed what South Park had put into the canon. Man Bear Pig appeared again in the Imaginationland trilogy in season 11. In those episodes, the creature shows up among the monsters of Imaginationland, a place where every fictional creature ever invented exists. The appearance in Imaginationland further locked in Man Bear Pig's status as a made-up thing, a monster that lived alongside other made-up monsters because it was within the show's world imaginary. For 12 years, that is where the character stood, a joke about a fake monster, a vehicle for mocking a former vice president, a thing the show had said was not real and then confirmed was not real by putting it in a place where fake things live. Then came season 22. Season 22, episodes 6 and 7 are called Time to Get Cereal and Nobody Got Cereal, and they aired in November 2018. The episodes open with Man Bear Pig attacking South Park, not visiting, not being suspected, attacking. The creature is enormous, violent, and very real. It tears through the town. People die. Buildings are destroyed. The damage is not ambiguous, and it is not a dream. The boys, faced with an actual Man Bear Pig destroying their town, do what the show has trained them to do when they need adult help with a serious problem. They go find the one adult who warned them about it. They go find Al Gore. Gore is living alone. He has been waiting 12 years for someone to believe him. When the boys show up, he does not simply help them. He asks for something first. He asks them to apologize. They apologize. On screen, in the episode, the 4 boys of South Park look at Al Gore and say they are sorry for not believing him. Gore accepts. He helps them. them. Man Bear Pig continues to destroy things. The episode's broader plot involves the boys trying to make a deal with Man Bear Pig, offering it something in exchange for leaving South Park alone. The deal they end up making is a direct reference to climate change politics. The older generation made a deal with Man Bear Pig long ago, trading future consequences for present comfort. Stan confronts his grandfather in a senior home and accuses the older generation of signing away the future. His grandfather admits they made the trade knowingly, figuring they would be dead before the consequences arrive. Man Bear Pig's rampage is framed as those consequences finally showing up. This is not subtle. The show is not hiding what it is doing. Man Bear Pig is climate change. Al Gore was right. The boys were wrong. Parker and Stone were wrong. The apology is real. Salon covered the season 22 episodes at the time of airing and described the 2-episode arc as South Park's creators admitting they were wrong about climate change, noting that it is not easy for anyone to admit being wrong about something that's significant and that Parker and Stone deserved credit for doing it. Multiple other outlets covered the same reversal. Gore himself apparently responded with gratitude and found the whole thing funny. Now here is the canonical problem. Both sets of episodes exist in South Park's timeline. Man Bear Pig is fictional in season 10. Man Bear Pig is real and has been destroying property and killing people in season 22. The creature cannot be both simultaneously. The show's own world contains two versions of the same event that directly contradict each other. The Imagination Land episodes add a specific wrinkle. In those episodes, which aired in season 11, one full season after Man Bear Pig was established as fictional, the creature appears among the monsters of Imagination Land. Imagination Land is specifically a place where imaginary things exist. Putting Man Bear Pig there was the show doubling down on its fictional status, and then 11 seasons later, the show made it real. There is a comment that circulated in the South Park community around the time of the season 22 episodes that gets at the strangeness of this. A fan pointed out that the weird thing about Man Bear Pig being real in season 22 is that real climate change also exists in the world of South Park. The show has referenced global warming and environmental damage in other episodes, treating them as genuine phenomena within the show's world. So Man Bear Pig being a stand-in for climate change creates a situation where the show's world contains both literal climate change and a physical monster representing climate change. And those two things coexist without the show explaining how they relate. Parker and Stone never addressed the Imagination Land continuity specifically. The Imagination Land trilogy is generally considered a fully canonical set of episodes. Man Bear Pig's appearance there as an imaginary creature sits alongside Man Bear Pig's appearance in season 22 as a real destructive force, and the show does not connect those dots. What makes this canon problem distinct from most of the others on this list is that it is not an accident. The contradiction between season 10 and season 22 is not a continuity error, something slipping through because the writers forgot what they had established. Parker and Stone knew exactly what they had done in season 10. They built season 22 specifically to address it. The reversal was the point. Most long-running shows develop continuity problems gradually, through oversight or changing creative priorities. A character's backstory shifts because the writers forgot the original detail. A timeline gets muddied because no one was tracking it closely enough. Those problems exist in South Park too. There are plenty of them across 27 seasons. The Man Bear Pig situation is something rarer. A show decided its own past position was wrong. Not a story decision, a real-world position. Parker and Stone had used their show to argue in 2006 that climate alarm was overblown and that the people raising it were doing so for personal rather than scientific reasons. By 2018, they had changed their minds. They used the show to say so. And in doing that, they created a permanent contradiction in the show's own timeline that no in-universe explanation can fully resolve. The season 10 episode is still in the canon. It still exists. It still portrays Al Gore as delusional and Man Bear Pig as imaginary. Those facts do not appear because season 22 reversed them. Any viewer who watches the show in order, moving from season 10 to season 22, will watch the show establish something as false, and then watch the same show establish that same thing as true, with an on-screen apology in between. South Park is a show that has always taken pride in not caring about consistency in the way other shows do. Parker and Stone have said many times that they approach each episode fresh, reacting to what is happening in the world at the time, without worrying too much about what came before. That approach is part of what makes the show capable of responding to current events faster than almost any other television series. The show's entire production model, famously completing episodes in about 6 days, exists to serve that responsiveness. The Man Bear Pig reversal is that responsiveness working at its most extreme. The thing being responded to was not a current event in 2018. It was an episode from 2006. The show looked back at its own past, identified something it had gotten gotten wrong, and corrected it in the only way it knows how to correct things, by making the correction part of the story. That is actually a more honest thing to do than pretending the 2006 episode did not exist. Some shows in a similar position would simply stop referencing the earlier material and hope audiences forgot. South Park went back, found the specific character it had mocked for being right, put him in an episode, and had the main characters apologize to him directly. The contradiction remains. Season 10 and Season 22 cannot both be true within the same consistent world, but the show earned something by handling the reversal the way it did. Not quietly, not through omission, but through an explicit on-screen acknowledgement that it had been wrong. Al Gore has never officially appeared in South Park since the Season 22 episode. Manbear Pig has not been revisited. The apology stands as the final word the show has had on the subject, at least for now. What is worth sitting with is the broader implication of what happened. South Park spent years positioning itself as the show that did not take sides, that mocked everyone equally, that saw through every political position and found the absurdity in all of them. The Man-Bear Pig arc is the clearest example in the show's history where that positioning broke down, where the show had taken a side in 2006 and had to acknowledge in 2018 that the side it took was the wrong one. That is not nothing. Very few television shows of any kind have ever done that. The fact that it created a canonical contradiction is almost secondary to the fact that it happened at all. The Season 10 episode is still watchable. The jokes still land on their own terms, but it sits in the canon now with a different weight than it had before Season 22, carrying the knowledge that the show itself eventually decided the jokes were pointing in the wrong direction. There is a fan discussion point that comes up periodically around whether the Man-Bear Pig reversal makes the original episode unwatchable or just complicated. Most fans seem to land somewhere in the middle. The episode is still funny, but it is funny differently now. The way a joke lands differently once you know the person telling it later regretted it. That complication is built into the canon permanently. Season 10 happened. Season 22 happened. Both are South Park. The monster was fake and then it was real. The warning was a joke and then it was an apology. The show wrote itself into a corner, spent 12 years in it, and then knocked the wall down. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Not every canon problem in South Park involves the show changing its mind about something real-world significant. Some of them are smaller and stranger, involving a single character's name, the mechanics of how a retcon gets deployed in real time, and what happens when the joke the show is making about itself is funnier than anyone expected, but also impossible to fully reconcile with 24 seasons of existing material. That story is next. Section 4, Token Tolkien, the name that was always wrong until it wasn't. There is a kid in South Park who has been in the show since the very first episode. He appears in Cartman Gets an Anal Probe, the series premiere that aired on August 13, 1997. He is standing in the background. He has no lines. He is just there. A blonde-haired, no, wait, he has dark hair. He is the only black kid in the 4th grade class at South Park Elementary. For the first several episodes, he is just a face in the crowd, a background presence, someone the camera passes over on its way to Stan and Kyle and Cartman and Kenny. His name, when the show finally gave him one, was Token Black. The name was a joke, not a hidden joke, not a subtle one, a completely upfront, out in the open joke about the television habit of including exactly one black character in a cast of white characters purely to avoid looking like the cast was all white. That character is called a token, a symbolic gesture toward diversity that does not actually engage with diversity in any meaningful way. South Park named its one black student Token to make that joke explicit. The show was pointing at its own version of the thing it was mocking. Token got more screen time as the seasons went on. He became part of Craig's group of kids, appeared in more storyline, and developed enough of a personality that he felt like a real recurring character rather than a background prop. He was established as one of the wealthiest kids in South Park. His family lived in a large house. His parents drove nice cars, and the show used this occasionally to play with assumptions about race and class in America. He played bass guitar. He was generally one of the more level-headed kids in his grade. He was smart, he was calm, and he had a name that was, by any measure, a joke at his expense. For 24 seasons, the name was Token. This is documented thoroughly and without any ambiguity. Closed caption spelled it Token. Official Comedy Central material spelled it Token. The South Park video game South Park, The Stick of Truth, released in 2014, spelled it Token. South Park, The Fractured But Whole, released in 2017, spelled it Token. In the Season 6 episode Wing, Token signs a record contract on screen, spelled Token. In the Season 7 episode South Park is Gay, his name appears on his jacket, spelled Token. In the Season 16 episode Raising the Bar, his production company name appears on screen as Token Black Prod, spelled Token. In the list, a Season 11 episode, Wendy, BB, Red, and Nelly all spell his name name out, Token. The South Park Wiki's trivia page for the season 25 episode that changed everything lists these specific example explicitly, confirming that before February 2022, the name Token was not just assumed but actively displayed in the show's own text across multiple episodes and seasons. Then season 25 episode 2 aired on February 9, 2022. The episode is called The Big Fix. Randy Marsh, sitting at home, has a realization: his family has no black friend. He decides to fix this by inviting Token and his family over for dinner, intending to then use the friendship to make his marijuana business, Integrity Farms, appear more diverse and therefore more marketable. Token's father, Steve Black, sees through this immediately and decides to start a rival marijuana farm across the street called Credigree Weed. The B plot involves Randy being confronted with his own tokenism, which is pointed and funny and the kind of satire South Park has always done well. The A plot involves Stan. Stan at some point during the episode refers to his friend as Token. Another character corrects him: his friend's name is not Token, his name is Tolkien, as in J.R.R. Tolkien, the author of The Lord of the Rings. Stan is confused. He thought his friend's name was Token this whole time. Everyone else in the episode, Tolkien himself, his parents, the other kids, the adults, acts as though the name has always been Tolkien, and that Stan is the only person who ever thought otherwise. Stan goes to a doctor because he is worried about himself. The doctor confirms it. The name is Tolkien. Stan spends the episode feeling guilty for having assumed that the one black kid in school would be named after a racial stereotype. The joke is a retcon delivered as a Mandela effect, the term for when a large group of people share a false memory of something that did not happen. The show was engineering that experience in real time, trying to make the audience feel what Stan feels. The creeping realization that maybe they had always been wrong about what the name was. It mostly worked. Fans were genuinely divided on whether to play along. The R South Park community and TV tropes both document this split. Some fans immediately adopted Tolkien as the canonical spelling and began correcting anyone who said otherwise, while others rejected the retcon as dishonest and continued using Token. The fandom argument got heated enough that TV Tropes' entry on the episode notes that the more vocal group of Tolkien supporters sometimes use the in-episode framing to call anyone saying Token a racist, which became its own source of irritation for people who simply remembered what the show had actually said for 24 years. Immediately after the episode aired, South Park's official accounts updated everywhere. The show's official website changed every instance of Token to Tolkien. The South Park Phone Destroyer mobile game, which was still in active development at the time, updated his name in all 5 of his character cards. Social media accounts changed. The retcon was applied across all active platforms simultaneously. South Park, The Stick of Truth, and South Park, The Fractured But Whole were not updated. Ubisoft, which made both games, released an official statement explaining that the name change had occurred after those games concluded their core development and that updating them was not feasible. So 2 officially licensed South Park games, both considered part of the franchise's extended material, still spell the name Token as of their last updates. This means the name Tolkien exists in some official South Park material, and Token exists in other official South Park material, simultaneously, with no plan to resolve the difference across all platforms. The contradictions the retcon created within the show itself are documented extensively in the South Park Wiki's trivia section for The Big Fix. Characters in the episode still pronounce the name in a way that sounds identical to Token. There is no pronunciation difference between Token and Tolkien in the way the show voices the name. The distinction only exists in spelling, which means every scene before The Big Fix where the name was spoken aloud is now ambiguous. Was that character saying Token or Tolkien? The show cannot answer this because the spoken word is the same either way. More specifically, the episode has Wendy, Red, Baby, and Nellie raise their hands when asked if they knew how Tolkien's name was spelled, confirming they always knew it was Tolkien. But these are the same 4 girls who spelled it Token in The List, a season 11 episode. The show is asking the audience to accept that these specific characters who put the name Token in writing in an earlier episode always knew it was Tolkien. Both episodes are canon. Both cannot be true. Stan's own subtitles within The Big Fix still read Token in some moment, which the show itself appears not to have caught or chosen not to fix, creating a situation where the episode introducing the new spelling also contains the old spelling in its own text. The Tolkien retcon is a specific kind of canon problem, one the show created deliberately with full awareness of what it was doing as part of the joke. The Big Fix is an episode about tokenism. Randy's storyline is about treating Steve Black as a symbol of diversity rather than a person. The show named a character Token for 2 decades as a joke about tokenism, and then decided in season 25 to address that directly by retroactively making the name a reference to something else entirely. The meta layer of what The Big Fix is doing is clear. The show is acknowledging, after 24 years that naming its one black character token was the kind of thing worth examining. By making Stan the only person who thought the name was Token, the episode puts the audience in Stan's position, asking whether they had been complicit in assuming something unflattering without questioning it. Whether that works as a satisfying resolution depends on how generously the viewer reads the retcon. The problem is that it requires accepting the show had always intended Tolkien, which the documented record directly disproved. The name was Token. It was spelled Token in official material. The character was created as a joke about tokenism, and the name was the punchline. Changing that retroactively does not erase what the joke was for 24 years. It just adds a new layer on top of it. The giant freaking robot's coverage of the episode noted this plainly. Token Black's name was always in reference to the trope of the token black guy, since he had his first speaking role in season 3 because he is the only black kid in town. The Tolkien explanation was applied after the fact. That is not a reading of the episode. That is what the show's own history confirms. What the Big Fix created, practically speaking, is a name that exists in 2 states, depending on which part of the South Park catalog is being referenced. Pre-2022 episodes use Token in their text. Post-2022 official materials use Tolkien. The active mobile game uses Tolkien. The 2 major console games use Token. The show's spoken dialogue is identical either way. Tolkien himself, as a character within the show, said in The Big Fix that he hates his name. This is a small detail that creates its own minor problem. For 24 seasons of episodes before The Big Fix, the character showed no visible distress about his name. He signed his production company, Token Black Prod, without any indication he found it offensive or embarrassing. The show's new position is that the name was always Tolkien, and he always hated it, but his behavior across hundreds of appearances does not support that reading. Trey Parker and Matt Stone committed to the retcon fully and publicly. Every active platform they control reflects the change. The joke landed well enough that a large portion of the fan base genuinely plays along with the fiction that it was always Tolkien. The Mandela effect the show was trying to engineer worked on many of the people watching, but the documented evidence is the documented evidence. Closed captions, in-show text, official merchandise, 2 AAA video games, all of it spells Token. The retcon happened in 2022 and applied forward. The 24 seasons before 2022 say something different. That is the canon problem. Not that the show changed the name. Shows change things all the time. The problem is the specific claim that the name was always Tolkien, which requires ignoring a large body of official South Park material that proves otherwise. The Big Fix is also notable for something it did not do. The show never acknowledged the retcon as a retcon within the episode. It presented the Tolkien reveal as a correction of a long-standing misunderstanding rather than as a deliberate change made in 2022. Stan is made to feel embarrassed for having been wrong. The audience is positioned similarly. The show never broke the fourth wall to say it was changing something. It maintained the fiction that nothing was being changed. That choice is part of what makes this case distinct from the Man-Bear-Pig reversal. The Man-Bear-Pig arc in season 22 acknowledged what it was doing. The boys apologized, Gore accepted. The show owned its reversal. The Tolkien retcon went the opposite direction, insisting there was nothing to reverse, and that the record had always said one thing when the record clearly said another. Both approaches created canon problems. The Man-Bear-Pig approach created a contradiction between 2 clearly stated positions in different seasons. The Tolkien approach created a contradiction between the new official position and 24 years of official materials that documented the old one. South Park has now left both contradictions in place. Neither has been formally addressed beyond what the episodes themselves contain. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. There is one more deliberate contradiction in the show's history that goes further than either of these. One that did not just change a position or a name, but removed the show's most beloved character entirely, built his exit around audio recordings he never agreed to use in that context, and created a farewell that the character's own son has since said did not make much sense. That story involves a musician, a religion, a stroke, and one of the most uncomfortable episodes in the show's entire run. Section 5, Chef's death, the exit that nobody fully agreed to Jerome McElroy. Chef was the one adult in South Park that the boys could actually trust. That is not a small thing in a show where every adult is either useless, corrupt, delusional, or actively making things worse. Randy Marsh spends most of the show being a disaster. Mr. Garrison is a tangle of psychological problems. Mr. Mackey delivers guidance that helps nobody. The parents of South Park are, as a collective, among the least reliable people on television. Chef existed as the exception. He was warm. He was funny. He gave real advice when the boys needed it, usually while singing something inappropriate. He was the show's moral center wrapped in an apron, and he appeared in almost every episode from the series premiere in 1997 through the end of season 9 in 2000. 2006. Isaac Hayes voiced Chef. Hayes was a celebrated musician and singer whose career stretched back decades before South Park existed. His voice was immediately recognizable, deep, smooth, distinctive in a way that made Chef feel like a real presence rather than a cartoon voice. Parker and Stone have talked about Hayes as one of the foundational elements of the show's early identity. The character worked because Hayes brought something genuine to it, and because the show used Chef's warmth as a counterweight to everything else that was cold and chaotic about South Park. Hayes was also a practicing member of the Church of Scientology. He had been a Scientologist since the 1990s. This was known, and it was not for a long time a source of any visible tension between Hayes and the show he worked on. South Park had mocked religions across its entire run. Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Mormonism, all of them had been targets at various points. Hayes appeared to have no objection to any of this. He continued working on the show through all of it. Then came season 9, episode 12. The episode is called Trapped in the Closet. It aired in November 2005. The episode is a direct, detailed, and extremely specific attack on Scientology, including a sequence where the show displays actual Scientology beliefs on screen as text, labeled "This is what Scientologists actually believe." Tom Cruise, John Travolta, and R. Kelly appear as versions of themselves. The episode won a Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Animated Program in 2006. Parker and Stone made a specific decision during the production of Trapped in the Closet. They did not involve Hayes in the creative process for that episode, aware that his religious beliefs made his participation complicated. Hayes was not consulted about the episode's content before it aired. The episode aired. Initial public reaction involved relatively little backlash. It was not until several months later, in March 2006, that Hayes resigned from South Park. A press statement was issued in his name that read, "There is a place in this world for satire, but there is a time when satire ends and intolerance and bigotry towards religious beliefs of others begin." The statement did not name Scientology directly. Hayes did not give interviews explaining his position in detail. Parker and Stone responded publicly with their own statement, noting that Hayes had never raised objections to South Park mocking other religion, and that they were surprised he drew the line at his own. The response from Parker and Stone was sharp. They framed Hayes' departure as hypocritical, given his silence on every previous religious satire the show had produced. The public version of events at the time was straightforward. Hayes quit because the show mocked Scientology. Parker and Stone were angry about it. Everyone moved on. That version of events turned out to be significantly incomplete. In 2016, Hayes' son, Isaac Hayes III, gave an interview to The Hollywood Reporter. What Hayes III said changed the shape of the story considerably. He revealed that his father had suffered a major stroke in January 2006, before the resignation statement was issued in March 2006. The stroke left Hayes unable to make significant decisions on his own. He was, according to his son, not in a position to independently decide to quit a television show he had worked on for 9 years. The people who issued the resignation statement on Hayes' behalf were Hayes III confirmed, members of his Scientologist team. Hayes the man, the musician who had voiced Chef since 1997, was not the person who made the call to leave. The decision was made for him by people around him during a period when he could not make it for himself. Hayes III stated that he understood Parker and Stone put the episode together, while in the dark about what was actually happening to his father. He said emotions were high on all sides. He also said plainly that he did not think the way Chef died made much sense in the scope of the show. That last part is the piece that matters most for the canon. Parker and Stone, working with what they knew at the time, which was a resignation statement and a public departure, made season 10 episode 1. The episode is called The Return of Chef. It aired on March 22nd, 2006, which was the season 10 premiere. The episode was constructed almost entirely from audio recordings Hayes had made during his 9 years on the show. Existing voice clips from previous episodes were edited together to create new sentences and new dialogue. Hayes did not record anything new for The Return of Chef. The voice in the episode is assembled from pieces of recordings Hayes made for completely different purposes across a decade of work. He never agreed to have those recordings used in this context. He did not know this episode was being made. In the episode, Chef returns to South Park after a period away. The boys are happy to see him, but Chef is behaving strangely. He is saying things that sound subtly off, almost like someone who has been brainwashed. The show reveals that Chef has been recruited by an organization called the Super Adventure Club, which the episode makes no effort to disguise as a stand-in for Scientology. The Super Adventure Club is described as a group that molests children and uses psychological manipulation to keep its members loyal. Chef, under the influence of the Super Adventure Club, begins acting against the boys' interests. Eventually, he falls from a bridge. He is struck by lightning. He catches fire. He falls down a cliff. He is impaled on on a branch. He is mauled by a lion. He is then mauled by a mountain bear. The body of the man who was the show's moral center for 9 seasons is torn apart in graphic detail. At his funeral, the boys give a eulogy. Stan says they should not be mad at Chef because Chef was their friend. They should be mad at the fruity little club that scrambled his brain. It is a direct statement from Parker and Stone, delivered through Stan, about where they placed the blame for what happened. Chef is then resurrected at the end of the episode by Super Adventure Club members, becoming a figure called Darth Chef, voiced by British actor Peter Serafinowicz, because Hayes' recordings could not produce the altered voice needed. The door for a return is technically left open by this ending. Chef is still alive in some form. He has just been turned into something else. That return never happened. Hayes died on August 10, 2008. The episode of South Park that aired following his real death, The China Problem, was dedicated to his memory. Darth Chef has not appeared since the return of Chef. The door that was left open has stayed open and empty. The canon result of all of this is that Chef's exit from South Park is built on audio recordings the actor never agreed to use in that way, assembled into a portrayal of a brainwashed cultist being physically destroyed, made by people who did not know the man was in the middle of a medical crisis when his resignation was filed. Hayes' third statement that Chef's death did not make much sense in the scope of things is worth examining carefully. In the scope of what the show had built around Chef, 9 seasons of him being the stable, trustworthy adult the boys returned to. The exit the show gave him is the opposite of what the character represented. Chef was the person who kept his head. The return of Chef depicts him as someone who lost his entirely. The warmth that Hayes brought to the role across 9 years is used in spliced form to construct a version of Chef that behaves in ways the real Chef never would have. The question of whether the return of Chef is ethical is one the show has never directly addressed. Parker and Stone have defended it as a response to what they understood to be a voluntary and public departure. They have not responded publicly to Hayes III's 2016 revelations about the stroke in any detailed way. The episode remains in the full canon. It is not flagged, not labeled, not accompanied by any acknowledgement of the circumstances under which it was made. From a purely canonical standpoint, the problems the return of Chef creates are specific. Chef's characterization across 9 seasons is built around him being a grounded, reliable presence. The episode that sends him out turns him into someone who has been psychologically broken by a cult. That break is presented as external. The Super Adventure Club did this to him. He was not this person underneath, but the damage is permanent within the story. The real Chef, the one the boys knew, is gone by the end of the episode even before the physical destruction. The show never brings Chef back in any form that acknowledges what he meant to the boys or what his absence cost them. In later seasons, after his death, Chef is occasionally referenced but not mourned in any sustained way. The boys move on. The town moves on. The character who was the one trustworthy adult in South Park is simply absent, and the show adjusts around the hole he left without ever filling it. There is also the question of what the return of Chef does to the seasons before it. Watching early South Park after seeing the return of Chef changes how Chef's presence read. The warmth is still there, but it sits alongside the knowledge of how his story ends. Turned against the boys, destroyed on a cliff, never properly returned to. The exit recontextualizes the character in ways that are harder to ignore once they are known. Hayes voiced Chef in hundreds of scenes across 9 seasons. He gave the character something genuine. The return of Chef used his recordings from all of those scenes to build something he did not consent to. A portrayal of brainwashing and destruction, made during a period when the man himself was in a medical crisis and could not speak for himself. That is the canon problem that has no clean resolution. Not a timeline contradiction, not a retconned name, not a reversed position on a real-world issue. The return of Chef is a canonical episode built on circumstances that were fundamentally different from what everyone involved believed them to be at the time. The episode exists because Parker and Stone thought Hayes had chosen to leave. Hayes may not have chosen anything. Hayes 3 has said he understands why Parker and Stone made the choices they made given what they knew. He has also said the outcome did not make sense. Both of those things can be true at the same time. Chef's legacy in South Park's canon is the show's warmest character, leaving through its coldest door. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The cases covered so far have involved deliberate creative choices, retcons, reversals, fabricated history, exits made under complicated circumstances. The next case is different. The next case is about a story that Parker and Stone started without knowing how to finish. Finished in a way that moved people more than almost anything else the show has ever done, and then quietly undid, because the only alternative was to change the show permanently, and they were not ready to do that. Section 6, You're Getting Old, the reset that admitted it was a reset. There is a scene near the end of the episode Ass Burgers where Stan Stan Marsh is sitting alone. Everything that broke apart in the previous episode has been put back together around him. His parents are back together. His friends are back. The town is back to normal. The cynicism that swallowed his world, the condition that made everything look and sound like literal excrement, has been medically explained away as Asperger's syndrome, then fixed through a plot device involving Cartman's burgers, and the episode is wrapping up the way South Park episodes are supposed to wrap up. Things reset. The status quo return. Life in South Park continues. Stan picks up a bottle of whiskey. He takes a drink. The world sounds normal again. He keeps drinking. He puts the bottle down, gets up, and walks out to join his friends. That image, an 8-year-old boy taking a secret drink of whiskey just to be able to tolerate his own life, is the most honest thing the show could offer at the end of an arc it did not know how to finish. It is not a happy ending. It is not a clean reset. It is the show saying, in the clearest possible terms, that the reset happened, but something real was lost in the process, and Stan is the only one who knows it. The 2-episode arc that produced that ending is the most unusual thing South has done with its own format across its entire run. The first episode, You're Getting Old, aired on June 8, 2011 as the mid-season finale for season 15. The setup is simple. Stan turns 10 years old. He receives a music CD as a birthday present from Kyle, a tween wave album, a genre the episode presents as music that sounds exactly like fart noises to anyone who has aged past a certain point. Stan listens to it and hears farts. He listens to other music and hears farts. He watches movies and they look like excrement. He tries to tell his friends and they do not understand him. Everything has turned to garbage in his perception and he cannot explain why, and nobody around him seems to notice that anything has changed. The episode starts as a joke about growing older and being unable to enjoy the things younger generations find exciting. Within the first half, it is still recognizably a South Park episode. There are bits about tween wave music, about critics who hate popular things, about Randy trying to seem young. Then something shifts. By the second half of You're Getting Old, the comedy drains out of the episode almost completely. Stan's cynicism is not played for laughs anymore. He sits alone in his room. His friends stop wanting to spend time with him because his negativity is exhausting. He tells Kyle that he feels like nothing makes him happy, and Kyle walks away. Randy and Sharon's marriage, strained across many previous episodes, finally breaks. Sharon tells Randy she is tired of everything always being an adventure and drama, and that she just wants a quiet life. They separate. Randy moves out. Stan is alone in a house that feels different. The episode ends with a montage. Stan alone, Randy in a new apartment, Sharon in the house. The boys moving through their lives without Stan in the group. The song playing over all of it is Landslide by Fleetwood Mac, a song about getting older and wondering if you are still the same person you were, about watching the world change around you while you try to figure out who you are becoming. The montage runs for about 2 minutes. It is quiet and genuinely sad in a way that South Park almost never allows itself to be without undercutting it with a joke. There is no joke. The episode ends. When You're Getting Old aired, the reaction from critics and fans was immediate and significant. Multiple media outlets published pieces arguing that the episode was Parker and Stone signaling that they were done with South Park. The New York Times, the AV, Club, Time Magazine, and others all covered the episode as a possible series finale in disguise. The reading was that the cynicism Stan was drowning in was Parker and Stone's own cynicism, that they had been making this show for 15 years and were tired of it, that the episode was a window into their actual feelings about the work, that the show might not come back from its mid-season break. Parker and Stone addressed this in the DVD commentary for season 15. They confirmed that the media attention surprised them. They said the episode had started as a straightforward parody of music criticism and had evolved into something more personal during production. They acknowledged that the ending was deliberately unresolved. They had started it as a riff on how serialized drama always wrap things up neatly, wanting to see what that felt like within South Park's normally episodic format. What they also admitted was that when they went into the first writer's room meeting after the mid-season break to plan the follow-up episode, the conversation began with the question of what the hell they were going to do now. They had written themselves into a corner. The ending of You're Getting Old left Stan depressed. His friendships dissolved, his parents separated, and the show's entire premise, 4 boys having adventures together in South Park, in pieces. Resolving all of that in 22 minutes of television while also being funny, and while also not invalidating the emotional weight of what You're Getting Old had built, was a problem with no obvious solution. The follow-up episode, Ass Asperger's, aired on October 5, 2011. Parker and Stone ultimately decided the show had to reset. The divorce was undone. Randy and Sharon reconciled. The boys came back together. Stan's condition was given a name, treated, and resolved. The world of South Park returned to its normal shape. Parker and Stone confirmed in the season 15 2015 DVD commentary that they were initially unsure whether to reset at all. They had considered leaving the changes in place, keeping the Marsh marriage dissolved, keeping Stan separated from his friends, building the back half of the season around that altered reality. They decided against it. The reset happened, but they refused to let it happen cleanly. The Stan drinking scene is the result of that refusal. They could not end Asperger's with everything simply back to normal and pretend You're Getting Old had not done what it did. The drinking scene is the show acknowledging that the reset is a lie, that things are back in place on the surface while something underneath has permanently shifted, and that Stan is the only character who feels the weight of that. The canonical problem this creates is layered. On the surface level, the Marsh divorce and remarriage adds to a pattern. Randy and Sharon had already split once before in the season 2 episode Clubhouses and reunited at the end of the same episode. The season 15 split is longer and more emotionally developed, but it follows the same path: separation, then restoration. The show has now used the Marsh marriage as a source of dramatic stakes twice and walked both instances back. Each time that happens, the previous instance becomes slightly less meaningful in retrospect because the audience knows the show will eventually put things back where they were. On a deeper level, the You're Getting Old and Asperger's arc created something that technically should not exist within South Park's format, but does. A permanent emotional residue that the show never fully cleaned up. The Stan drinking scene was not a throwaway moment. It was framed deliberately and shot with enough care that it clearly meant something. But after Asperger's, the show moved forward without Stan being an alcoholic, without his friends acknowledging that anything had happened, without any reference to the arc's events affecting how characters behave toward each other. The arc happened, the reset happened, the drinking scene happened, and then everything continued as if none of it had. This is the specific tension at the center of the You're Getting Old problem. The show's own creators confirmed they were unsure whether to reset. They reset anyway. They tried to soften the reset with the drinking scene, but the drinking scene exists in a show that then proceeded to not follow up on it, which means the softening gesture is itself part of the problem. Stan drinks whiskey in secret to cope with his life, and then in subsequent episodes, Stan is fine. Crack published a piece in 2024, 13 years after the episodes aired, noting that fans return to You're Getting Old and Asperger's regularly, and that the emotional impact has not diminished. The fan discussions around those episodes, on Reddit, in comment sections, in review threads, consistently describe the arc as one of the most honest things South Park has ever done about growing older. The Fleetwood Mac montage is frequently cited as one of the most affecting moments in the show's history. The reason people keep returning to those episodes is partly the quality and partly the strangeness of what the show did with them. You're Getting Old built something real and left it standing. Asperger's took it down but left a single piece standing in the form of that drinking scene. The piece that was left is enough to remember what the whole structure looked like, but not enough to rebuild it. The arc is complete and incomplete simultaneously. Parker and Stone's acknowledgement of the reset, their admission that they were not sure whether to do it, that they wrote the drinking scene specifically to avoid a clean resolution, is one of the more honest things the show's creators have said publicly about the relationship between South Park's format and its emotional possibility. The format demands a reset. The show runs on continuity being loose enough that any given episode can start fresh. That format works. It has worked for 27 seasons, but You're Getting Old found the edge of what that format costs. What gets left behind when everything resets? Stan's arc in those 2 episodes is the closest thing South Park has produced to a genuinely serialized character story with real stakes and real consequences. It ran for 44 minutes across 2 episodes and then ended with the show choosing its own structure over the story it had started. The choice is understandable. The loss is real. There is a reading of the Stan drinking scene that goes further than a soft acknowledgement. In that reading, Stan does not recover from his cynicism at the end of Asperger's. He manages it. He finds a way to function within a world that still looks bleak to him, and that way involves whiskey, and the show lets him walk out the door and rejoin his friends, as if the coping mechanism were not there. Under that reading, Stan Marsh has been a functioning depressive with a drinking habit since season 15, and the show simply does not acknowledge it, because acknowledging it would require sustained serialization the format cannot support. The show has never confirmed or denied that reading. It exists in the space between what Asperger's shows and what subsequent episodes pretend did not happen. The You're Getting Old arc will likely remain the most discussed canon problem in South Park's history that is not about a specific continuity error or retcon, because it is not a mistake and it is not a reversal of a stated position. It is a story the show started and could not finish on its own terms, finished on the show's terms instead, and left enough of the real story visible that audiences have spent over a decade decade trying to figure out what it actually meant. Not all of South Park's canon problems come from deliberate creative choices or emotional arcs that got away from their creators. Some of them are straightforward contradictions built up over the years through small errors. A character's background shifting from one episode to another. A backstory that cannot be reconciled with what came before. Details that slipped through because the moves fast and does not always check its own history before establishing new facts. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The next case is one of those. A character whose origin story exists in two incompatible versions within the same canon, and whose name the show has spelled two different ways across different official platforms without ever settling the question of which one is right. Section 7. Kyle Broflovsky. The origin that cannot make up its mind, Kyle Broflovsky has lived in South Park his whole life, except for when he moved there at age 3, except for when his mother was pregnant with him in New Jersey before he was born. All three of those things exist somewhere in the show's canon. All three cannot be true at the same time. The show established each one at a different point across its run without going back to address what the previous version had said. The result is a character whose basic personal history, where he came from, how he got to South Park, what his connection to the town actually is, exists in at least two genuinely incompatible versions, and possibly three, depending on how certain early episodes are read. Kyle is one of the four main characters. He has been in the show since the first episode. He is voiced by and loosely based on Matt Stone. He is the moral backbone of the group more often than anyone else. The character most likely to object when something crosses a line. The one who delivers the serious argument when a serious argument needs to be made. He is Jewish, which the show uses extensively across its run. He has a younger adopted brother named Ike, a father named Gerald, and a mother named Sheila who became famous among fans for her role in the South Park movie as the driving force behind a war against Canada. Kyle's basic identity is well established across the show. His origin, specifically where he came from before South Park, is not. The earliest version of Kyle's background that the show established is the one most viewers absorb without thinking too much about it, that the Broflovsky family moved to South Park when Kyle was very young, approximately 3 years old. This is referenced in several early episodes and fits naturally into the show's setup. The Broflovskys are the only Jewish family in South Park. They come from somewhere else. They brought their customs and their community and their history to a town that did not have any of those things before they arrived. This backstory made sense for what the show was doing with Kyle's character. His being slightly outside the South Park mainstream, Jewish in a town that is overwhelmingly Christian, with a mother whose values and behavior feel like they belong somewhere more urban and more intense than a small Colorado mountain town, was more legible if the family had come from somewhere else and brought their outside world identity with them. Then season 14 aired. Season 14's episode 9 is called "It's a Jersey Thing." It aired on October 13, 2010. The episode is about New Jersey culture spreading into South Park. People from New Jersey begin moving to town in large numbers, bringing with them a specific set of behaviors and attitudes that the rest of South Park finds overwhelming. The episode is a satire of the reality television culture around shows like Jersey Shore, which was at peak cultural visibility at time. The plot relevant to Kyle is this: as the Jersey people multiply in South Park, Kyle begins acting strangely. He starts behaving in the aggressive, loud, combative way the episode associates with New Jersey culture. He cannot explain why. Something is happening to him that he has no control over. He goes to a mirror and watches himself change. His hair goes into a different style. His clothes change. His attitude becomes hostile in a way that is unlike his normal behavior. The explanation the episode gives is that Kyle was conceived in New Jersey. His mother Sheila was pregnant with him while the family was still there, in Newark specifically. Kyle did not just live in New Jersey. At some point in his past, he began there. The first months of his physical existence happened in New Jersey. That connection, the episode argues, is why the Jersey culture triggers something biological in him when it appears in his environment. The episode treats this as a factual reveal about Kyle's backstory. Sheila confirms it. The show plays Kyle's Jersey transformation as having a real biological basis rooted in his origins. It is presented as new information being disclosed, not as a joke about Kyle having a weird dream or imagining things. Here is the problem. If Kyle was conceived while Sheila was pregnant in New Jersey, and the Broflovsky family then moved to South Park, the question becomes when exactly Sheila was pregnant. If she was pregnant with Kyle in New Jersey, she gave birth to Kyle somewhere, either still in New Jersey or after the move. If Kyle was born in New Jersey, then the earlier backstory about moving to South Park when Kyle was 3 needs to be rethought entirely. If Kyle was born in New Jersey and then the family moved to South Park, the move happened sometime in Kyle's first 3 years of life. That is technically possible to reconcile. Sheila Sheila is pregnant in New Jersey. Kyle is born there or shortly after the move. The family settles in South Park while Kyle is still a toddler, and the move at age 3 detail refers to Kyle being old enough to have some memory of the transition. But the South Park fan wiki's entry on Kyle's continuity errors, which documents this specific problem, notes that the two versions of his origin have been presented in ways that do not sit neatly alongside each other. Some earlier episodes describe the Broflovsky family arriving in South Park, specifically when Kyle was around 3, phrased in ways that suggest he was born elsewhere and brought to South Park at that age, not conceived elsewhere and born into South Park's orbit. The Jersey things reveal that Kyle was conceived there while Sheila was pregnant reads as a different backstory, rather than an elaboration of the same one. The fan wiki notes this as a continuity error without resolving it, because the show itself does not resolve it. Both versions exist. Both are presented as fact within their respective episode. The audience is left to determine which one to weight more heavily, with no guidance from the show about which came first or which is meant to supersede the other. Kyle's origin is not the only basic fact about him that the show has handled inconsistently. His birthday is stated in one episode to be May 26th. The episode Casa Bonita, Season 7, Episode 11, involves Kyle's birthday party. He says in the episode that he is inviting Butters because Butters invited him to his birthday party last month. If Butters' birthday was last month and Kyle's is now, Butters' birthday would be approximately a month before Kyle's. Butters' birthday is stated in the episode Awesome O to be September 11th. This creates a timeline where Kyle's birthday should be around October, which conflicts with the May 26th date stated in other material. This is a smaller inconsistency than the origin story problem, but it is the same pattern, the show establishing a fact in one episode and a different fact in another episode about the same character detail, without acknowledging the conflict. Kyle's age has also been handled inconsistently across the show's run. The show's general approach to age is that the boys are 8 years old for the first few seasons, become 9 at some point, and then are established as 10 during the middle season. Kyle turns 10 in the episode You're Getting Old in season 15, but his age is referenced inconsistently at various points before that, with different episodes implying different numbers depending on what the plot required. The South Park Fandom Wiki's list of continuity errors notes that in proper context in season 5, Butters says he is turning 9 next week, then in Cartman Sucks in season 11, Butters says he is still 8.
6 season gap.
During which Butters apparently did not age at all, which mirrors the broader problem the show has with its characters' ages across its run. Kyle's younger brother Ike has his own version of this problem. Ike is Kyle's adopted brother from Canada. In early seasons, Ike is clearly presented as a toddler, very young, barely verbal, crawling, or just learning to walk. As the show progresses, Ike becomes more articulate and takes on more of a speaking role in plots that involve him, but the show never commits to how old Ike actually is or allows him to age in any consistent way. He has been a toddler and a school-aged child depending on the episode, without the show acknowledging the gap. The Ike problem feeds back into Kyle's origin problem in a specific way. The backstory of Ike's adoption, where he came from in Canada, when Kyle began to accept him as a real brother, is developed across several episodes. By the end of Ike's Wee Wee in season 2, Kyle has reached a point of genuinely accepting Ike as his brother despite him being adopted. This character beat is treated as resolved and meaningful. Then in South Park, bigger, longer, and uncut, the movie released in 1999, Kyle still does not fully accept Ike as a true brother, a position the show had already moved past in the season 2 episode. The fan wiki notes this as a continuity error specific to the movie, while acknowledging that subsequent TV seasons treat Kyle's acceptance of Ike as settled. Kyle's relationship with his religion is handled with similar inconsistency. He is Jewish. This is one of the defining facts of his character, and the show uses it extensively across its run. But the degree to which Kyle is observant, the degree to which his family practices Judaism actively versus culturally, and Kyle's own feelings about his faith shift from episode to episode, depending on what the plot required. In some episodes, Kyle's Jewish identity is central to his decisions and values. In others, it functions purely as a target for Cartman's hostility, with no deeper engagement from Kyle himself. The show has never settled on a consistent version of what Kyle's relationship with Judaism actually looks like from the inside. None of these inconsistencies individually are devastating to the character. Kyle remains one of the most recognizable and well-defined characters in the show's history, despite the contradictions in his backstory. His voice, the moral argument, the pushback against Cartman, the willingness to be the character who says something is wrong when everyone else is going along, is consistent even when the facts around him are not. But the origin story problem, in particular, matters for a specific reason. Kyle's outsider status in South Park, the quality of being slightly different from the town around him, of coming from somewhere else and bringing doing something different with him is part of what makes him work as a character. That quality relies on there being a coherent backstory underneath it. If the family moved when Kyle was 3 and he has faint memories of somewhere else, that is one thing. If Kyle was biologically shaped by New Jersey in a way that can override his normal personality, that is something different. Both versions create outsider status, but they do it through incompatible mechanisms. The Jersey Things reveal is also the one that creates the strangest downstream question. If Kyle has a biological connection to New Jersey that activates under certain conditions, what does that mean for all the episodes before season 14 where Kyle behaves with complete composure and restraint? The show never revisits Kyle's Jersey side after it's a Jersey thing. The biological connection is established and then set aside. Like the Stan drinking scene in Asperger's, it is a reveal that the show does not follow up on. In addition to the character that creates questions the show has no interest in answering, Kyle Broflovsky has been in South Park since the beginning. His role in the show's moral architecture is clear and has been consistent. His origin story, his birthday, his age, and the mechanics of what his outsider status is actually built on are not. The show built him to be the voice of reason in a world that does not have much reason in it, and it did that job well enough that most viewers never stop to press on the foundation underneath. The foundation, when pressed, does not hold together cleanly. The origin contradictions in Kyle's story are the kind that develop gradually in a show that moves as fast as South Park does, not through malicious retconning or deliberate creative decisions, but through the accumulated weight of over 200 episodes written quickly, reacting to the world in real time, without a dedicated continuity manager checking every new detail against every old one. That speed is South Park's greatest strength. The show can respond to current events within days in ways no other television series can match. That same speed is the reason the canon leaks in places, because moving fast and checking everything carefully are two things that do not easily coexist. Kyle's origin is a leak. The Jersey thing added a detail that did not fit cleanly with what existed before. The earlier backstory about moving at age 3 did not fit cleanly with the Jersey thing. Both stayed in the show. Neither was fixed. Not all of the show's canon problems come from moving too fast. Some of them come from a character who was never designed to be a main character at all, who grew into something too big for the show to fully control, and whose behavior across over 2 decades of episodes contains contradictions the show seems to have chosen to leave in place rather than address, because addressing them would require committing to a version of the character that the show has always kept deliberately blurry. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. That character's name is Butters, and the story of how he went from a background extra with no name to the show's most beloved figure while accumulating a set of contradictions along the way is one the show has never fully reckoned with. Section 8, Butters Stotch. The character who grew too big for his own history, Leopold Butters Stotch, is in the very first episode of South Park. He does not have a name yet. He does not have a voice. He is a blonde kid standing in the background of classroom scenes and playground shots. Visible if you know to look for him. Invisible if you do not. He is scenery. The show is not thinking about him. Parker and Stone are thinking about Stan, Kyle, Cartman, and Kenny. The blonde kid in the background is not a character. He is furniture with a face. That is where Butters starts. What he became across the following 2 decades is one of the more genuinely strange evolutions in the show's history. A background prop who grew into the most emotionally resonant character South Park has ever produced, accumulating a fan base larger than almost anyone else in the cast, while also accumulating a set of contradictions in his history that the show has never fully resolved. The documented timeline of Butters' development is specific. He appears in the series premiere on August 13, 1997, with no lines and no identity. The storyboards and production scripts for seasons 1 and 2 referred to him under 2 different placeholder names: Puff Puff in season 1 materials and Swanson in season 2 material. Neither name stuck. He was not important enough yet to need a real one. His first speaking appearance came in season 2, episode 11, an episode called Roger E. Burt Should Lay Off the Fatty Foods. He says something small. He is still not a character. He is a classmate who happened to get a line. The moment that changed things came in season 3. The episode 2 Guys Naked in a Hot Tub aired as part of a 3-episode event where each of the 4 main boys went somewhere different during a meteor shower. Stan ended up at his parents' party and was stuck hanging out with a group the show called Melvin, kids considered boring or odd by the rest of the grade. The Melvins included a kid named Butter, not Puff Puff, not Swanson, Butters. That episode 2 Guys Naked in a Hot Tub is the first time the name Butters appeared in the show. He got screen time. He had a personality, nervous, eager to please, slightly confused by the world around him. He was funny in a way that was different from the other kids. Where Stan and Kyle were cynical and Kyle was moral, and Cartman Cartman was manipulative. Butters was simply innocent, not stupid, not naive in a mean-spirited way, just genuinely, stubbornly, almost impossibly good-natured in a world that kept doing awful things to him, Parker and Stone noticed. In interviews and DVD commentaries from around season 5 and season 6, both have talked about how Butters became one of their favorite characters to write for. Stone in particular has cited Butters as a personal favorite. Parker has said that the scenes with Butters and Cartman are among his favorite things the show has ever produced. The affection is real. It shows in how the character was used as his role expanded. Butters got his own episode at the end of season 5. The episode is called Butters' Very Own Episode, and it is season 5 episode 14, the finale of the season that also killed Kenny permanently. The episode follows Butters and his parents through a series of escalating disasters, all of which Butters experiences with a kind of cheerful confusion that makes the darkness around him somehow more visible. By contrast, Parker and Stone have described this episode as a formal introduction, a way of telling the audience that this character was going to matter going forward. When Kenny died at the end of season 5 and was absent through all of season 6, Butters became one of the rotating replacements for the 4th spot in the group. He was the first option, the most prominent one, and for a significant portion of season 6, he was functioning as a main character. He was also fired from the group during season 6 in an episode called Butters' Very Own Episode, and then replaced temporarily by Tweak, another background character who Parker and Stone were also interested in developing. Tweak did not stick the way Butters did. Butters stuck completely. By season 7 and beyond, his role in the show was secure. He was the 5th main character in everything but the opening credits. His relationship with Cartman became one of the show's most reliable comedic and emotional engine. His alter ego Professor Chaos, developed in season 6, gave him a recurring villain identity that the show has returned to across multiple seasons. His alter ego Margarine, from the season 9 episode of the same name, is among the most celebrated single episode character moments in the show's history. All of that growth happened organically, driven by Parker and Stone's genuine affection for what the character could do. And that organic growth is precisely why the contradictions in Butters' history are the kind they are. Not dramatic retcons or deliberate reversals, but the accumulated inconsistencies of a character the show never fully planned for. The most straightforward contradiction involves his last name. In season 2, production materials listed the blonde background kid as Swanson. The name Swanson appears in at least one early episode's context as a surname associated with the character. By the time Butters was properly established as a named character, his surname was Stotch. Stephen and Linda Stotch are his parents, and this has been consistent across the show's run. The South Park wiki for Butters lists his name as Leopold Butters Stotch, with a note that the formerly used surname was Swanson, acknowledging the switch without explaining when or why it happened in any canonical sense. The name Swanson belongs to the pre-character era, before Butters had an identity. The name Stotch belongs to the character the show built. Neither can be the name of the same person simultaneously. The second contradiction involves his birthday. In the episode Awesome O, which is season 8 episode 5, Butters tells Cartman, who is disguised as a robot, that his birthday is September 11th. This is presented as a casual fact, the kind of personal detail a kid would share with a friend. It is in the dialogue. It aired. It is canon. The episode Going Native, season 16 episode 11, reveals that Butters was born on the island of Kauai in Hawaii. His parents take him back there in the episode as part of a coming-of-age ritual connected to his Hawaiian heritage. The episode establishes this as a real fact about Butters' origins. He was not born in South Park or in Colorado. He was born in Hawaii. Being born in Hawaii does not contradict having a September 11th birthday. A person can be born in Hawaii on September 11th. The birthday and the birthplace exist in separate factual categories. What Going Native creates is a different kind of problem. Butters' entire character is built around being a small-town kid, the most South Park of South Park child in the show, the one whose innocence and vulnerability come directly from growing up in this specific place with these specific people. His parents are deeply embedded in South Park's community. His life revolves entirely around the town. The revelation that he was born in Hawaii and has a cultural heritage connected to that island sits uneasily against everything the show has built around him, not because it is factually impossible, but because the show never addresses it again. Going Native uses the Hawaii backstory for one episode and then sets it aside permanently. The third and most significant contradiction involves Butters' parents and the consistency of how they treat him. Stephen and Linda Stotch are among the most specific parental figures South Park has built. Their treatment of Butters is the foundation of his character. He is constantly grounded, constantly punished for things that are not his fault or that were done to him rather than by him, constantly navigating a home environment where love and cruelty exist in unpredictable combinations. isolation. His terror of being grounded is one of his defining traits. The threat of his parents' punishment shapes his decisions in episode after episode. What makes the Stotches canonically complicated is that their behavior toward Butters ranges across an enormous spectrum depending on the episode. In some episodes, they are simply strict parents who go too far, punishing Butters harshly for minor infractions, grounding him for things that any reasonable person would recognize as not his fault. In these episodes, they are exaggerated versions of controlling parents, played for dark comedy but recognizable. In other episodes, they are something else entirely. In Butters' very own episode, Linda Stotch attempts to drown Butters in a car by driving it into a lake. She is trying to kill her own child because she discovered that her husband was visiting gay bathhouses and she does not want Butters to know. The episode plays this as dark comedy, but the action itself, a mother attempting to murder her son, is categorically different from being a strict parent who grounds him too often. The show treats it as a dark episode climax and then moves forward. In subsequent episodes, Linda is back to being Butters' fairly normal, if strict mother. Stephen Stotch has similarly extreme moments that the show does not integrate into his baseline characterization. In the episode Awesomeo, he and Linda believe Butters has run away and do not appear particularly distressed. In Margarine, they hold a funeral for their son after he fakes his death as part of a scheme Cartman designed, and Stephen, believing Margarine is his son reborn, chains the person he thinks is a reincarnated Butters to a wall in the basement. The show plays this as absurdist horror comedy. In the following episodes, Stephen is back to being the slightly overbearing but fundamentally recognizable South Park dad. The pattern with the Stotches is that the show uses them for whatever extreme the episode requires, and then resets them. The extreme episodes are canonical. Linda attempted to drown Butters. Stephen chained someone to a basement wall, but the character consistency that would make those events feel like part of a coherent picture is not there. The Stotches who exist in the calmer episodes and the Stotches who exist in the extreme episodes are not fully the same people. This matters for Butters specifically because his character is defined by his relationship with his parents. If his parents are inconsistently characterized, sometimes recognizably strict, sometimes attempting murder, sometimes negligent, sometimes deeply involved in his life, then the foundation of what Butters is responding to is unstable. The fear of being grounded that runs through every Butters storyline implies parents whose punishment is severe but predictable. The Stotches across all their appearances are neither. The fourth contradiction is smaller but telling. In the episode Cartman Sucks, Season 11, Episode 2, Butters is sent to a Christian conversion camp, a camp designed to eliminate what his parents believe are tendencies toward bisexuality. The episode takes a clear and serious position on the harm this kind of treatment causes. Butters is victimized by a system his parents put him in. His confusion about his own identity is treated with genuine sympathy. The contradiction is that Butters' apparent bisexuality or sexual confusion, established as significant enough to send him to a conversion camp, is never developed further. It appears in Cartman Sucks and then disappears from his characterization. Subsequent seasons treat Butters as straightforwardly interested in girls. He has crushes, he pursues relationships, and none of the complexity established in Cartman Sucks carries forward into how his romantic life is depicted. What all of these contradictions share is a common source. Butters was not designed with a complete history in mind. He was a background character who earned his ult through his presence rather than through planning. The show built his personality before it built his backstory, and the backstory got filled in episode by episode as different writers and story needs required different things from him. The result is a character whose personality is one of the most consistent and well-defined in South Park's history, while the facts surrounding him accumulate inconsistencies the show has never had cause to address. Butters works despite all of this. His consistency is emotional rather than biographical. The specific facts of his history, what his last name was originally, exactly when his birthday is, what his parents are truly capable of, what his sexuality actually involved, are less stable than his core quality, which is a kind of goodness under pressure that the show has maintained across hundreds of appearances. Parker and Stone built something real with Butters without fully knowing they were building it. The contradictions are the price of that kind of organic development. The character outgrew the planning, and the planning shows its gaps. The fan base that developed around Butters reflects this. He is beloved for what he is emotionally, not for the coherence of what surrounds him. The inconsistencies in his history are known among dedicated viewers, but they do not not diminish what the character means to people who watch the show. Butters landing somewhere so deep in audiences' affections despite the gaps in his construction is a testament to how much his core personality carries. But the gaps are real. The name change. The birthday conflicts with the birthplace logic. The parents oscillate between strict and homicidal, without the show integrating those extremes. The sexuality storyline was opened and closed without resolution. All of it sits in the canon alongside the warmth and the goodness and the grounding terror. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The show that produced all of Butters' contradictions is the same show that built its entire canon around one particular structural choice, a choice so fundamental that most viewers accept it completely without thinking about it, and yet one that, when examined carefully, produces the strangest ongoing contradiction in the show's history. The four main boys have been in 4th grade for almost 30 years. The world around them has changed constantly. They have not, and the show has an explanation for this. Or rather, it has the beginning of one that raises more questions than it answers. Section 9. The Boys Who Never Age. South Park's strangest ongoing problems. Stan Marsh, Kyle Broflovsky, Eric Cartman, and Kenny McCormick have been in 4th grade since the year 2000. Before that, they were in 3rd grade for 3 seasons, from the show's premiere in 1997 through season 3 in 1999. The transition happened in season 4, episode 1, an episode literally called 4th Grade, which aired on November 8, 2000. The boys moved up a year. They got a new teacher. The show acknowledged the change directly and even made the adjustment part of the episode's plot. The boys tried to travel back in time to get back to 3rd grade because they missed it, realized they did not actually want to go back, and accepted 4th grade as their new reality. That was the last time the boys aged. They have been in 4th grade for every season since season 4. They were in 4th grade when George W. Bush was president. They were in 4th grade when Barack Obama was president. They were in 4th grade during Donald Trump's first term, during the COVID pandemic, and through every cultural moment the show has reacted to across more than 2 decades of episodes. Presidential elections have happened inside the show's world. The show depicted the 2008 election, 2016 election. The characters have aged into a world that clearly moves through real time. The boys have not moved with it. They remain 10 years old in 4th grade at South Park Elementary indefinitely. This is not unique to South Park. The Simpsons family has been the same ages for over 30 years. Family Guy's characters do not age. Animated shows built around specific character ages and dynamics almost universally choose to freeze their characters in place rather than age them, because aging them would fundamentally change what the show is. What makes South Park's version of this problem distinct is that the show explicitly sets its episodes in the current year. This is not a show that exists in a timeless bubble. When a South Park episode references a specific news event, it is referencing something that happened in the actual world within the past several days or weeks. The show has always treated current events as the fabric of its world. Characters react to real elections, real cultural moments, real technology. The South Park of season 26 is not the same world as the South Park of season 3, because the actual world has changed and the show reflects those changes continuously. The boys stand perfectly still inside all of that movement. This creates a mathematical impossibility that the show's own fan community has documented carefully. Stan, Kyle, Cartman, and Kenny were approximately 8 years old in 1997 when the show began. They became 9 at some point, then 10 when they moved to 4th grade in season 4. The show has depicted real presidential elections as in-world events. Characters voted, discussed candidate, reacted to results. Multiple presidential election cycles have passed within the show's timeline. The boys have remained 10 years old through all of them. A fan on CBR calculated that if Kyle was 8 years old in the 1997 pilot, he would have been born in approximately 1989. By the current real-world year, Kyle Broflovsky would be in his mid-30s. The show has never acknowledged this. Kyle does not know he is in his mid-30s. He is 10. He goes to 4th grade. He argues with Cartman. Trey Parker addressed the aging question directly in an interview published in The Vindicator, a newspaper, around the time the 4th grade episode aired. He described the decision to age the boys from 3rd to 4th grade as, in his words, kind of a joke, a spoof on how shows like Beverly Hills 90210 change because the actors get older. The comment makes clear that Parker was aware of the convention he was playing with and was not planning to continue aging the characters. 4th grade was the stopping point. The joke was that the show acknowledged one age transition and then stopped. The show has mostly been consistent about maintaining that freeze. There are minor exceptions, moments where a character's age is given as 9 when earlier episodes said 8, moments where the number shifts slightly, but these are small inconsistencies rather than genuine character progression. The boys are 10 years old and they stay 10. What makes the freeze interesting interesting rather than merely conventional is what South Park did in Season 14, Episode 12, Mysterian Rises. Kenny as Mysterian explicitly confronts Stan and Kyle about the fact that they never remember him dying. He tells them it happens all the time. They are confused. He demonstrates by shooting himself. They forget immediately. He is left alone with the knowledge. This scene, documented in the sections earlier in this script, introduced something that extends beyond the Kenny immortality question. The memory wipe that accompanies Kenny's deaths, the supernatural reset that the Cthulhu cult connection creates, does more than just erase the deaths. A fan theory, documented on CBR and the South Park fandom wiki, argues that Kenny's curse extends further than just the deaths themselves. Under this theory, Kenny's continuous dying and returning creates a temporal loop that keeps the entire town frozen. The deaths do not just reset memory, they reset time itself in a localized way, keeping South Park's population from aging while still allowing the world outside to move forward normally. The theory is specific about its mechanics. Kenny dies, he is reborn. The process subtly resets the conditions around him. Not completely, not in a way that erases events or memories, but in a way that prevents the natural aging process from taking hold. The people of South Park accumulate experiences and memories. They react to new events, they grow emotionally and situationally, but they do not physically age. The boys stay 10. Randy stays the age Randy is. The town stays the town it is. This is a fan theory. The show has not confirmed it. Parker and Stone have not endorsed it in any interview or commentary. The theory originated on Reddit in 2013, was documented on CBR, and has circulated through the South Park fan community since then. It is not canon. What it is, however, is the most internally consistent explanation that exists within the show's own established mythology for why the characters do not age. The theory works because the Cthulhu connection is canon. Kenny's parents attending the cult meetings is confirmed in Mysterian Rises. The immortality it created is confirmed. The memory wipe is confirmed. The theory simply takes those confirmed elements and extends their reach, arguing that the supernatural force affecting Kenny is powerful enough to affect the whole town, not just his own body. The show itself in Mysterian Rises drops one specific line that the theory's proponents point to as suggestive. During the cult meeting that Kenny attends as Mysterian, the assembled group recites a line from H.P. Lovecraft's writing that is not dead which can eternal lie, and with strange eons even death may die. Kenny is visibly disturbed by this line in the episode. He leaves the meeting to think about what it means. The episode treats his reaction as significant. The Lovecraft line is about things that appear dead but are not, forces that wait outside normal time, unaffected by its passage. Kenny's reaction to it in the episode implies that the line connects to something real about his condition. Whether that connection extends to the aging question is the gap the theory fills. The second and separate fan theory about the aging problem involves Kyle specifically. This theory, also documented on CBR and originating from a Reddit post, argues that Kyle is the one character in South Park who is actually aware that the boys have not aged. The evidence the theory draws on comes from Season 4, Episode 1, The Tooth Fairy Tats. In that episode, Kyle tells Stan that he is afraid he might not be real. He says he can sometimes see time slowing down. The show plays this as an existential crisis Kyle is having and resolves it within the episode, but the specific detail, time slowing down, is what the theory focuses on. Under this reading, Kyle's awareness of slowing time is a symptom of being partially outside the temporal loop rather than fully inside it. He cannot stop the loop, he cannot age, but he can feel it operating, which is why he behaves with greater maturity and moral seriousness than the other boys across the show's later seasons. The theory argues that Kyle acts older than the other boys because he is, in some functional sense, older. He has been accumulating awareness of time's passage even while his body stays 10. The theory also attempts to explain Kyle's intensity in arguments, his refusal to go along with things he finds wrong, his persistent moral objection. The argument is that Kyle's behavior makes more sense if understood as someone who has lived far longer than his body suggests, someone who carries the accumulated weight of decades inside a 10-year-old frame, and whose seriousness comes from that weight rather than from character alone. This theory is also not confirmed by the show. Parker and Stone have never said Kyle is aware of the time loop. The Tooth Fairy Tats episode does not frame Kyle's comment about time slowing down as a literal observation about a supernatural phenomenon. The show presents it as a moment of childhood existential anxiety, not as evidence of extrasensory awareness. But the theory survives because the show genuinely has not explained why Kyle behaves with the level of moral weight he carries. There is a real quality to Kyle's characterization, a seriousness that goes beyond what the show needs from a 10-year-old character, and the theory is an attempt to account for it within the show's own mythology. Both theories share a structure. They take something the show established as canon, Kenny's immortality, the Cthulhu connection, the memory wipe, and extend it to cover a problem the show never never addressed directly. They are using the show's own building blocks to fill a gap the show left open. The gap is real. The boys do not age. The world around them does. The show has never explained this within its own fiction. The closest it came was the 4th grade episode, which acknowledged that aging could happen and then stopped it. A moment Trey Parker himself described as a joke. The practical consequences of the freeze are visible throughout the show's run in ways that become stranger the longer the show continues. The boys in season 27 are the same age as the boys in season 4. Cartman in season 27 is not a more developed or mature version of season 4 Cartman. He is the same age, with the same accumulated behaviors, responding to a world that has changed enormously around him. The show handles this by treating each era's Cartman as contemporary rather than continuous. He reacts to current events because the show is current, not because he has grown through the years between. The aging freeze also creates a specific problem for the episodes that tried to take the boys' emotional development seriously. The You're Getting Old arc covered in section 6 is the most obvious example. That arc is about growing up, about the specific pain of getting older, and finding that the things that used to make you happy no longer do. Stan turns 10 in that arc. 10 is a specific real age milestone within the show's internal logic, because the show has established that the boys are 10. The emotional weight of You're Getting Old depends on the audience feeling that Stan is genuinely at a threshold, old enough to start experiencing adult disillusionment, young enough that it is devastating rather than expected. But the boys have been 10 for over 20 years of the show's real-world run. The emotional weight of a 10-year-old hitting a wall of cynicism is different if the character has been 10 for 2 decades of television. The show asks its audience to feel the milestone as real, while also maintaining a format that makes the milestone permanently temporary. Stan's 10th birthday happened in season 15 and will apparently never lead anywhere, because the show cannot age him past it without changing what it is. The Randy and Sharon divorce, also when You're Getting Old, runs into the same wall. The emotional stakes of parents separating are real in that arc, but those parents are part of a show that resets, and their son is part of a show that does not age, and the reset of their marriage follows logically from the same formal decision that keeps the boys at 10. A show that keeps its child characters frozen in childhood also keeps everything around those characters in a similar suspension. The parents can separate and reconcile because nothing in South Park can permanently progress. This is the most fundamental canon problem in the show's history, not because it involves a retcon or a contradiction between 2 specific episodes, but because it is built into the show's structure at the deepest level. The show cannot be what it is and also allow its characters to age. The characters cannot age and also live in a world that moves through real time. The world does move through real time and the characters do not age. All 3 of these things are true simultaneously, and the show has chosen to leave them in that state rather than resolve the tension between them. The fan theories about Kenny's curse and Kyle's awareness are attempts to give the impossibility a mythological explanation, to make the freeze feel like something the show's world contains and understands, rather than something the show simply requires and ignores. They are generous reading. They do the work the show declined to do. The show itself has never done that work and shows no sign of doing it. The boys are 10. They will likely remain 10. The world will keep changing around them, and they will keep reacting to it from the permanent vantage point of 4th grade at South Park Elementary, which is exactly where they have always been and exactly where, for the purposes of South Park, they will always stay. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. There is one more case in this series that has not been covered yet, the strangest structural episode in the show's entire history. A single installment that the show's own canon documentation explicitly excludes from primary continuity, where every flashback shown is wrong, where the entire episode turns out to be a dream inside a dream, and where one detail that appeared to be a mistake in that dream accidentally predicted a reveal the show would not make for another 12 seasons. Section 10, City on the Edge of Forever. The episode that predicted its own retcon by accident there is an episode of South Park where every memory shown on screen is wrong, not slightly off, not exaggerated for comic effect, wrong in specific, deliberate, documented ways. Stan kisses Wendy instead of throwing up on her. Kenny kills Death instead of dying to it. A character's prosthetic leg belongs to a different celebrity than the show had established. Mr. Garrison shoots someone for a reason that contradicts the original episode. Every single flashback the boys share in this episode ends the same way, with someone eating ice cream and saying the exact same phrase, which nobody in the episode finds strange until the boys point it out. The episode is called City on the Edge of Forever. It is season 2, episode 7. It aired on June 17, 1998. The official title includes the word flashbacks in parentheses, City on the Edge of Forever flashback, to indicate that the episode is built around the characters remembering previous previous events. Except the memories are all false, every single one. The premise is this: the school bus carrying the South Park kids gets stuck on a cliff edge during a snowstorm. Mrs. Crabtree, the bus driver, leaves to get help. The kids are stranded. While they wait, they pass the time by sharing memories of things they have experienced together. The memories are each told from a different kid's perspective. Stan remembers one thing, Kyle remembers another, Cartman remembers another, and each memory is presented as a flashback to a real earlier episode. Flashbacks are not accurate. Every one of them shows a different version of what actually happened in the episodes being recalled. The differences are not subtle. Stan's memory of his first interaction with Wendy shows him kissing her confidently rather than vomiting on her nervously, which is what actually happened in the show. Kenny's memory of the episode featuring death shows Kenny killing death rather than being killed by it. The mountain creature Scuzzlebutt, who appeared in the pilot episode Volcano, is remembered as having Patrick Duffy as his prosthetic leg, which is what the original episode established, except the show then shows a different celebrity in that role in the distorted memory. The South Park Wiki's trivia page for the episode documents each of these discrepancies specifically and confirms them against the original episode. The false memories are not accidents of production. The episode was designed to show wrong versions of real events. The wrongness is the joke. The show is parodying the television convention of the clip show, an episode that replays footage from earlier episodes, usually to save production costs by making all the clips inaccurate. At the end of the episode, after several nested layers of memory and confusion, the resolution arrives. Cartman wakes up in his bed. He explains to his mother that he just had a strange dream. She offers him beetles for breakfast. He eats them and says they taste better with ice cream. Then Stan wakes up in his bed and calls Kyle. He tells Kyle about the weird dream he just had. Kyle says it sounds messed up. Stan gets dressed and goes to find his friend. The entire episode, the bus on the cliff, the memories, Crabtree's comedy career subplot, all of it was a dream inside a dream. Cartman's dream was inside Stan's dream. The South Park Fanon Wiki's canon documentation page, which defines what counts as primary South Park continuity, explicitly excludes most of City on the Edge of Forever from the show's canonical record. The phrasing is direct. The primary canon consists of the theatrical film and all episodes, excluding much of City on the Edge of Forever. The word much is doing specific work there. Not all of the episode is excluded. Most of it is. The dream within a dream structure means that the events involving the kids on the bus, the memories they share, and the framing device are all non-canonical. They did not happen within the show's actual timeline. The Mrs. Crabtree subplot is the complicated part. While the kids are stranded in their dream, Mrs. Crabtree has her own storyline running parallel. She stumbles into a comedy club, performs her signature line, becomes a stand-up comedian, appears on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno, and eventually meets a truck driver who tells her everything is the dream of an 8-year-old kid. Mrs. Crabtree is with this truck driver near Stark's Pond at the very end of the episode after Stan wakes up. The truck driver tells her it was all a dream. She says she wants to enjoy it a little longer. This ending creates the ambiguity that makes the episode's canon status complicated rather than simple. If the whole thing was Stan's dream, Mrs. Crabtree's comedy career never happened. She went back to being the school bus driver. But the final scene, her sitting near Stark's Pond after Stan wakes up in what appears to be real time, implies she exists outside the dream. The show places her in that scene after the dream ends, which suggests some version of her subplot may have been real. The South Park Wiki does not resolve this. The canon documentation excludes much of the episode, but does not specify which parts of Mrs. Crabtree's subplot, if any, are meant to be taken as real events. The ambiguity is left in place. Mrs. Crabtree appeared in the show's regular continuity in later episodes as the bus driver without any reference to a comedy career, which suggests the show itself treated the comedy career as non-canonical. But the final scene near the pond is never explained away cleanly. All of this would make City on the Edge of Forever a moderately interesting structural oddity in the show's history. A clip show parody that turned out to be a dream. Excluded from the main canon, notable for its formal cleverness, but not particularly significant for the show's ongoing continuity. Then there is Cartman's memory. In the episode, the boys share memories of various previous South Park events. When it is Cartman's turn, he shares his memory of the episode, Cartman's mom is still a dirty slut. The season 2 episode where Dr. Mephisto delivers the results of the paternity test and reveals who Cartman's father is. In the actual canon version of that episode, the answer given is that Leanne Cartman is a hermaphrodite and is therefore Cartman's father. In Cartman's distorted dream memory of that episode, the answer is different. In his memory, the father is identified as John Elway. John Elway was at that time the starting quarterback for the Denver Broncos. The show presents this as a wrong memory. The episode has already established that every memory being shared is distorted. Cartman's memory of the father reveal is distorted sounded like all the others. The John Elway answer is obviously wrong. It is a dream version of the event, not the real one. The joke is that Cartman's wishful thinking or confused dreaming has replaced the real answer with a famous athlete from a local team. The South Park Wiki's trivia page for City on the Edge of Forever confirms this explicitly. In Cartman's recollection, he believes John Elway, a former member of the Denver Broncos, is his father. The note continues. It is revealed 12 seasons later in the episode 201 that Cartman's father was indeed a Denver Bronco, but not John Elway. That note is the thing. The trivia page is documenting what happened, but cannot fully explain it, because what happened is genuinely strange. In season 2, in an episode that is mostly non-canonical, in a deliberately distorted dream sequence, Cartman's subconscious produced a version of the father reveal where the answer was a Denver Bronco. 12 seasons later, the show revealed that the real answer was also a Denver Bronco, Jack Tennerman, who played right tackle for the team, not the famous quarterback John Elway, but a member of the same organization. Parker and Stone have not claimed this was intentional. The available evidence, including their DVD commentary statements about not having planned the Jack Tennerman reveal from the beginning, and genuinely not knowing who Cartman's father was going to be for most of the show's run, strongly suggests the Elway detail in City on the Edge of Forever was not a planted clue. It was a joke about a local sports team and a distorted dream memory, placed in an episode that was about distorted dream memories, in a section of that episode that the show's own canon documentation later excluded from the primary continuity. The Jack Tennerman connection was not apparent when City on the Edge of Forever aired. It became apparent only after 201 aired in season 14, and viewers went back through the show's history looking for anything that might have anticipated the reveal. City on the Edge of Forever surfaced as a data point, not a planted hint, not a deliberate setup, but an accident that retroactively looked like foreshadowing. This is a specific kind of canonical strangeness that has no clean category. The episode is mostly non-canon. The memory within it is explicitly a wrong memory. The wrong memory accidentally contained a detail, Denver Broncos, that would turn out to be correct within the real canon 12 seasons later. The correct detail appeared in an incorrect memory in a non-canonical episode before the correct answer existed even in the minds of the show's creator. The South Park fan community has treated this as one of the more fascinating accidents in the show's history. Discussions of it appear regularly in deep dive threads and analysis posts across Reddit and fan wikis. The consensus position is that it was not intentional, that Parker and Stone chose the Denver Broncos for Cartman's dream father because the Broncos were a Colorado team and the joke was locally grounded, but that the accident produced something that functions like foreshadowing even though it was not. The episode also contains one more small detail worth noting. The title City on the Edge of Forever is a reference to a famous 1967 Star Trek episode of the same name. The South Park Wiki confirms this directly. Several other elements of the episode parody Star Trek specifically. A kid in a red uniform gets eaten by a monster, referencing the Star Trek tradition of characters in red uniforms dying quickly. The self-awareness of the parody extends to the episode's structure, which takes the Star Trek episode's title and uses it for a South Park episode that is formally doing something similar, playing with time, memory, and the reliability of what the audience has seen. The Star Trek episode the title references is itself about time travel and the unreliability of memory across different timelines. The South Park episode uses the title for a story about memories that are all wrong, housed inside a dream that turns out to be inside another dream. The reference is appropriate in ways that extend beyond the joke. City on the Edge of Forever sits in South Park's history as the episode that is mostly not there, excluded from the primary canon, built around false memories framed as a dream, and yet it contains the accident that looked most like prophecy, the distorted memory that reached 12 seasons forward and touched the real answer without knowing what it was reaching toward. The show moved on from the episode without looking back. The Broncos detail sat in a non-canonical dream sequence for 12 years while the show went in other directions. Then 201 arrived and made Cartman's father a Bronco, and the dream memory became the strangest footnote in the show's entire history, a wrong answer that was right about the most important thing. Every case covered across these 10 sections points toward the same underlying reality. South Park is a show that moves faster than almost anything else on television, reacts to the world in real time, and carries 27 seasons of history that was never fully planned from the beginning. The contradictions, the retcons, the accidents, the deliberate reversal, they are all products of the same engine. A show that lives in the present generates a complicated past. What that means for everything covered across this entire video is worth examining carefully, not just as a list of canon problems, but as a picture of what kind of show South Park actually is, and what those problems reveal about how it has operated across nearly 3 decades of production. If you enjoyed this video, video essay, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.